joining us. All right, we're going to share. All right, there we go. Good evening, everyone. I'm Barbara Kelly, and I'm with the Hearing Loss Association of America, and we're broadcasting here from our headquarters office in Bethesda, Maryland. HLAA is a consumer organization, nonprofit, and our mission is to open the world to people with hearing loss through information, education, support, and advocacy. And we are very happy to bring you this webinar series and our other webinars who we have recorded and archived on our website at hearingloss.org. So if at the end of this webinar, if you like it, please keep in touch with us. Subscribe to our free e-news, join as a member and receive Hearing Life magazine. We have an annual convention and a walk for hearing. But those are some of the things, but without further delay, I would like you, first of all, I'd like to thank our captioner, who's Deanna Baker, and then our presenter, who is Loretta Byrne. And you will be able to ask her questions at the end, that's when she'll take questions. And you can start your questions throughout the webinar, and she'll be able to see them, but she will save them to the end. And Loretta Byrne is a research services educator at Vanderbilt University Medical Center and is the project manager for the national NCATS funded platform researchmatch.org. And that's what she's here this evening to talk about. She began her career in nursing at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and has experienced in medical and cardiology nursing. So she has all kinds of experience that she's going to share with you, and she's here to talk about researchmatch.org. Loretta, I'd like to turn it over to you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you to the HLAA for hosting this webinar. And I really do appreciate Barbara Kelly, the Executive Director of HLAA, running this webinar tonight. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me. So tonight, during this webinar, we're going to look at some of the basic information about the types of research studies that are out there. I want to talk about and suggest what you should ask before you agree to participate in a research study. We'll talk a little about what happens during a research study and when you're participating, if you choose to. And I'd like to talk about your rights as a research participant, and then finally, where you can find studies. I'm not endorsing any study in particular, nor am I suggesting that a trial is better than any current healthcare plan that you might be on, or devices or treatments that you're using, because it may not be. I also want to encourage you to always ask your healthcare provider before taking part in a research study to see if your healthcare provider thinks that that's a good idea for you. On this slide, there's a nice graphic here that kind of describes the process that's involved from the beginning to the end of a research trial. There are many different types of studies out there, and not all studies are quote-unquote clinical trials that are investigating a new device or a new drug that's not yet FDA approved. But even if they're not looking at new devices or new drugs, all research studies and researchers are overseen by federal regulations and also the regulations of their institute. So I just want to talk about that for a minute while we stay on this slide. Clinical trials and research studies are conducted in accordance with ethical principles. And before a study is initiated, the people that are involved, the principal investigators and the scientists, have to assess the foreseeable risks and weigh those against any anticipated benefit that this trial might have for people. The rights and safety and well-being of the people who take part in this study are of utmost importance and the most important consideration in a study. Clinical studies are scientifically sound and based on a plan that's called a protocol. And this plan has to have review and approval by something called an institutional review board, which is called an IRB. So you might hear that term IRB, and it has to have approval by an IRB. Researchers that are involved in clinical trials need to be qualified based on their education and training to conduct that study. People who take part in studies have to freely give their consent to be in the study, and they can leave at any time. You're going to hear me say that many times tonight. All records about the participant in a trial have to be kept confidential so that these people cannot be exposed and their data cannot be leaked accidentally. And finally, investigational products like drugs or devices are manufactured and handled and stored in accordance with other regulatory principles that are called good manufacturing processes. So I just want you to know that there is a lot of regulation that governs what researchers do. Next slide. So first, let's look at research that involves new treatments and new devices that are not yet FDA approved. It can take 13 to 20 years from the beginning to the end of that process for a new drug to come onto the market. It can take 13 to 20 years. While I'm talking to you about this today, about research studies, I'm doing so because the enrollment of volunteers into studies is challenging, and it can be challenging for many reasons. Sometimes it's challenging because the studies themselves are challenging. There's burdens involved with taking part in them. You have to travel. There's risks involved. They may not even be ready to accommodate people with hearing loss at their studies. And sometimes that's a barrier for people, specifically a barrier for people with hearing loss. But in a 2015 analysis of trials that are on something called clinicaltrials.gov, which is basically a website from the federal government that's a list of all studies, 86% of clinical trials don't recruit and have enough participants. And so they don't finish their enrollment in the time that they were allotted. So usually a study can last for like 5 years or more. They may not finish the study. 86% don't finish the study in time. And 19% of the trials are actually closed because they don't get enough participants at all. Next slide. Thank you. And while most people will never really take part in a research study, most people don't take part in research studies, right? But really all of us benefit from the people that do. Because when you think about it, every drug that we take that's FDA approved had to be taken by somebody first. And it's those people that we're really indebted to because they took part in a research study. So it's an important problem for all of us because when studies don't get completed, there's a research gap and new devices and new drugs are not getting on the market. So it's something that we all want to fix. So let's think about why people don't participate. Many times there's a lack of opportunity. If you're living in a very rural area, you can't make it to a clinical trial. You don't have the opportunity. But a lot of times it's just because people don't know about studies or they're not comfortable. There's too much risk. They don't feel safe. And they may not trust the institution or trust the doctors. They just don't feel safe. And again, some studies are not prepared to include people with hearing loss. So that's a barrier in and of itself. Next slide. But I'd like to help reduce some of these barriers by talking about tonight with you what research is and how you can think about it and maybe some resources where you can find these opportunities. Clinical research trial is a carefully designed study to answer an important medical question. Trials are conducted to collect information about people like you or me that may volunteer to receive these experimental treatments. These are in these clinical trials that we're talking about right now. Trials are conducted in a careful plan, that protocol, and they've done step by step so that at the end they can determine if one treatment or device is better than another. Clinical trials can include new drugs and devices. They can include new ways of doing surgery. They might look at new ways to use existing treatments, new ways to change behavior in people, or they may look to improve quality of life in participants. Slide. Some studies of types of clinical research are called epidemiology research, and think of the Framingham Heart Study when you think of epidemiology studies. Behavioral studies look to improve the understanding of human behavior and how it relates to health. These studies, this bracket of studies can also include surveys or your perceptions and your experiences. related to an intervention, or it might just be a survey of your opinions. Health service studies look at educational plans or programs for the hearing impaired to see what if we test two of these against each other to see which is the best. And then there's clinical trials like I just described, and we'll describe in a little bit more detail. The National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, the NIDCD, is currently supporting research in these different brackets. They are supporting research on the causes of age-related hearing loss, and they're supporting scientists who are exploring the potential of growing new hair cells in the inner ear using drug and gene therapies. The NIDCD is supporting science that's exploring medications that may reduce and prevent noise-induced and age-related hearing loss. And they're also supporting the developing and refining of devices that can be used to help people with hearing loss. Next slide. So you may have heard the term a phase 1 trial or a phase 2 trial, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that now. And I'm also sharing this infographic with you, which you can find yourself by going to the NIH's website and typing in find a clinical trial or research trials, the basics. This is a nice little infographic to have on hand that describes this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 trials. Next slide. Okay, so studies like this that are testing new devices and new treatments, new drugs that are not yet FDA approved, start with preclinical work, stuff that's outside the hospital and is usually in a laboratory. They may be working at the bench on cells, on human cells or in animals. They're studying these microbes and molecules and mechanisms so that they can get some basic research data and get funding, and then they can move on to working with humans. So first, that non-human research is done to prove that there's a benefit and there's a relationship. Next slide. Then we would move into these phase 1 trials. Phase 1 trials are test this new drug or device in a small number of people, maybe only 20 people, maybe up to 100 people. And these are healthy volunteers and also people for which no other treatment has worked. So it's people who sort of have no other recourse except to be in a clinical trial. And they are entered into these phase 1 first in human trials. This is the first time this drug or device has ever been used in a human. The goal of a phase 1 is to figure out what a safe dose of this drug or if this device is safe. Really, they're looking at safety. And while they're looking at that, they're collecting a lot of other data about how the body is responding to this. Next slide. In a phase 2 study, a few more people are enrolled, maybe 100 to 300 people. And they're looking to see they're looking at people with the disease or with the disorder. And the goal of a phase 2 is to test the effectiveness and also still the safety of the drug. But it's mainly is this effective? And also collecting data on the side effects. Next slide. In a phase 3 study, phase 3 trials study the treatment in an even larger group. On the next slide, thanks. And this can be 1,000 to 3,000 people, and this can go on for several years. And the group of volunteers usually includes people of all different races and ages and genders and health conditions. The goal is to find out more about the safety and the effectiveness of the treatment in diverse groups of people, and what the best dosage is for the people with different characteristics, and to also compare that new drug or device to commonly used treatments. Next slide. And finally, in a phase 4 trial, they're looking at, the drug has already been FDA approved, so they're looking at it long-term, and they're looking to test it maybe in special populations. Sometimes they also look at these FDA-approved drugs and use them to test other situations with that FDA-approved drug. Next slide. So, but not So not all research is a clinical trial, like I spoke about. I've actually taken part in 4 or 5 studies or more. I've taken part in 3 studies about hearing loss, where I gave my opinion and I shared my perspective while I was listening to sounds and voices that were clear and muted and sort of distorted in different ways, and I was describing whether it made me feel at ease or stressed and things like that. So that's also a study that's IRB approved and has all that oversight. But anytime you take part in any kind of study, you'll probably be asked to sign a consent, and you have certain rights. And I want you to think about things that you should ask before you take part in a study. First, what's the purpose of the study? Why am I doing this? Why is it important? Do they accommodate for me if I have hearing loss problems? Who's in charge of the study? You should know the scientists and the doctors that are in charge, at least by name, and maybe have some idea of their reputation. What are the risks involved? And this is important. Make sure you understand that this study may have risks and what those are, and also understand if you'll benefit at all. Some studies may have a benefit and some studies may have no benefit at all. Ask if you'll be able to see your regular doctor while you're in the study, or if you'll be treated by the doctors that are in charge of the study. Ask if there'll be any chance of getting a placebo, and I'm going to describe what that is, or a sham, which might be, which is like a procedure that's not real, but it seems real. But for the purposes of the study, it's important that they use a placebo or a sham so that they can test things scientifically. Find out how long you'll be in the study, if you'll be compensated for your travel or for your time. Ask if you can stay on your current drugs or your devices. You could ask, and you should be told how your privacy is protected. And then ask if you can figure this out. This is a tricky one, but does the person in charge or the people in charge have any financial interest in the study? That can be hard to find out, but might be clear if you're going to a site where you can tell that you might get a feeling like some studies may not feel as good as other studies. By that I mean if you go to the Mayo Clinic or Vanderbilt University Center or the University of Chicago, UC San Diego, you're probably in pretty good hands. But if you go to a little clinic, it may be a better question to ask if you're going to a private office or a little clinic. Next slide. When you get to the site where you're going to take part in this study, the first thing you should be doing is meeting the research team. And that would probably be the research coordinator. The coordinator will help you through the trial. He or she should sort of take you through from the beginning of the end. And you may also meet the doctors in charge or the principal investigator who leads the study. Next slide. So when you're deciding to participate, the studies team should go over everything and explain the study in detail, and then go over the consent with you. The FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, the Food and Drug Administration requires that volunteers are given enough information so that they can decide for themselves and have a good understanding of what's involved, and then decide if they should participate. And again, this study should be IRB approved. So when you're looking at that consent document, don't be intimidated. It can be a little intimidating, and the words can be hard to understand. So take your time. You should never feel rushed. I'll say that again at the end. And you should ask a lot of questions. The informed consent will go over the purpose of the study. It will describe the study and all of the procedures in that plan. It'll tell you your risks and your benefits. It should also tell you alternatives that you can have if you don't want to be in the study. It will tell you if you're being compensated or if you'll receive treatment. It'll tell you who to contact. It should have phone numbers for the principal investigator on that consent. It'll tell you that you always have the right to walk away and say, I don't want to be in this anymore. It'll talk about how they're going to keep your information private and at the institution and confidential, or any reasons why they may have to share it with others. And it'll tell you that the study is listed on clinicaltrials.gov, which is a website that I just described, which is basically a list of studies. Next slide. The Informed consent will also talk about any unforeseeable risks, because there could be risks that they don't realize yet or know about. They'll talk about any under what circumstances they might decide that this study is not a good fit for you and they would like to withdraw you from the study. And that's something that's usually done for your safety or because they're stopping the study altogether. They'll talk about any costs to you, if there are any costs. They'll talk about a statement that if any new significant findings have been found out during the course of the study, they are sharing those with you. They'll say what happens if you choose to withdraw, like you'll go back on your medicine or you should see your doctor. And they'll tell you the approximate number of people that are going to take part in the study. And so even if you do sign this consent, again, you can always walk away from a study. It's always your prerogative. Next slide. So during a study, what will happen? You'll probably have a screening visit where you'll come in, you'll meet the team, you'll sign the consent, and then they'll evaluate if you qualify. And not everybody qualifies for everything that they want to take part in, because there's something called like criteria to be included. And there's also criteria for people who shouldn't be included because it's not safe to include them or it's not scientifically sound. So that's an important part of taking part in a study, that when you come in for a screening, just be very open and frank and honest about your health history, and so that the two of you, the principal investigator, the study coordinator, and you can make a good decision about whether this is a good fit for you and a good idea for you to be in this study. Then you'll have study visits. Those might mean going to the facility like the University of Rochester or the Mayo Clinic. Maybe there's a clinical research center that you'll go to. There might be surveys. They may ask you to keep a diary. There might be pills. There might be a device. There might be lifestyle changes. Research can also be added to your current standard care. So sometimes while you're going through a regular routine procedure, there might be a little piece added on that's the research study. You're going to follow procedures. So you're the most important part of research, and what's written in that consent are basically directions for what you're going to be asked to do and what they're hoping and pretty sure that you're going to be compliant and do. So you'll be asked to take a pill or not take a pill or use this device or record your symptoms. So that's all very, very important. And they also want you to call them and tell them if things are not going right or you don't feel well, or if you stop taking the pill, let them know, okay? And if you're thinking something might be a side effect or something seems different, let the team know. And then finally, at the end, you'll have a final visit, and you could ask for a summary of the findings for yourself. You could ask for a copy of some of your lab results. Maybe they'll tell you about the study at the end, and have a sense of when you'll be compensated. Next slide. So how do trials work? Again, researchers use different methods to make sure that the results of the study, the investigation, are fair to everybody involved and useful. So they use certain techniques and certain methods to help show at the end of the study that the results that they found in the study didn't happen by chance, like it just happened. They want to prove, after all of this and all these people took place, that the reason it happened was because of the new device. You know, the symptoms were improved, or new drug resulted in different lab values or something like that. So there's certain methods. One of them is randomization. So if people are randomized, and many times you'll see these terms in the consent that you're asked to read, and it'll be easy to sort of skim over them, but I want you to understand them and ask about them, because if it's important. And so don't be intimidated again and think, well, I don't understand that, and that's okay. It's not that hard, and let's go over it right now. So randomization means that you might get something or you might get something else. There'll be 2 or more treatments, and they'll pick which one you get, sort of like the toss of a coin. So rather than picking people for a team based on whether you like them, you're going to flip a coin or draw straws. Randomization is like that. Being blinded in the study, or double blinded, means that the researcher doesn't know who's getting which treatment that's randomized, and neither does the participant. And that helps to decrease the chances of something called bias being involved, where the researcher might treat people differently who he knows or she knows are getting the placebo. So if it's randomized, people are usually blinded to knowing what you're getting or which device you got. A placebo is something that can resemble a drug. It might look just like the other drug, but it's actually just like a compound that has nothing in it. So it could be a pill that might just have a powder in it or a sugar in it. So it's not really a medication at all. And they use placebos in a trial so that they, again, can show that at the end, maybe the people with the placebo had this reaction and the people on the drug had that reaction. Next slide. Some special considerations about being in a trial. Children are in research trials all the time, and when they are, they give their consent, but more and equally as important is that their parents give consent for them. Clinical trials can cover medications while you're in the study, and sometimes they cover the cost of medications after the study, but not always. So you should ask about that. You might be using a device during a study, but then you won't have access to that device until it becomes FDA approved, right? And you should ask if anything that's involved in the study will be billed to you or to your insurance. But usually a study will cover the costs of things that are involved with the study. Next slide. Common features of hearing loss study. All trials have something called endpoints, so the goal of the study. And in hearing loss studies, the endpoints are usually, depending on the type of study, some common ones, are people's experiences, their subjective perceptions, again, if they're in some sort of observational behavioral studies. If they're in a clinical trial, they would be looking at the safety and effectiveness of those devices and drugs. They might be looking at symptom improvement, improved quality of life, and program evaluation. Next slide. So we've talked a lot about what a trial is. Let's talk about what your rights as a research volunteer are. You have the right to be fully informed of the purpose of the research study, including all of the procedures that are going to happen. You have the right to be treated with respect and in every aspect of the research process. You have the right to have adequate time to consider whether you want to participate. You can always say, I don't know, I need to think about this for a while. I don't know, I need to talk to my doctor. You have the right to be given a description of the risks, any discomforts, any inconveniences to you. You have a right to be given a description of the benefits that you may reasonably expect to receive. You have the right to be provided an explanation for alternative procedures that you could take advantage of and are available to you. Next slide. You also have the right to ask questions about the research study and other procedures. You have the right to be told about if you may be withdrawn from a study, or if you withdraw at any time, if that changes, how that changes your health care, or what you should do after you withdraw. You have the right to decide to participate in a research study without any force or coercion. Nobody should ever say, well, if you really wanted to make your doctor happy, you should be in this study. You have the right to not experience that, and no one should make you feel like you were pushed into being in a study. Not a family member, not a researcher. No one should make you feel that you should get into a study if you're not ready. You have the right to be provided an explanation of alternative drugs and devices, and you have the right to be informed of where to get medical treatment if problems from the research study arise. Next slide. So, let's talk about opportunities a little bit. I don't want to encourage you to be in a study if you don't want to be, but if you'd like to consider what's out there for you. I am the project manager of something called Research Match. I'm also a nurse, and I'm a research services consultant and educator at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been a nurse since the 80s, and I am now serving as project manager for Research Match is one of my hats that I wear at Vanderbilt. And I also am the manager of trials today. So those are two resources you can use. They're funded by the NIH, and I'm going to show you a little bit about them. But other sources to find out about clinical trials and research studies in general are from your doctor, and also at your local medical center, especially if you are near a large academic medical center like NYU or Massachusetts General or the University of Miami, the University of Texas, University of California and San Diego, Vanderbilt, University of Chicago, University of Rochester in New York. Those websites and those sites have lots of trials going on. You can look on clinicaltrials.gov, which is that list of trials from the NIH. And you can also look at patient advocacy organizations like the Hearing Loss Association of America. Next slide. So Research Match is a project that's funded by the National Institutes of Health. We're fully funded by them. We don't take money from drug companies. We don't take charitable donations. And we're funded to help people find out about study opportunities so that studies can finish faster. And we're pleased to be supported by the HLAA as a resource for you. And we can be found on the HLAA's website. Next slide. Research Match is funded by the NIH, so I'm showing you their website, some shots from their website. We're used at many universities and medical centers across the country as a resource to be connected with people like you. I'm also showing you the NIH's Clinical Research Center's website, and you can see us listed there. Research Match is a free resource for everyone. Research Match is designed to connect people who are interested in finding out about research with researchers that need people to take part in their studies. So it's called Research Match. Next slide. Research Match started at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in 2010, and it was created also to support research teams so that they can find people to be in their studies. And Research Match includes people who are healthy and people who are not healthy. There are over 40,000 people who have joined Research Match as volunteers who have no health conditions, and there's also people with multiple health conditions, and there's over there's people with many rare diseases. People with rare diseases are in Research Match too, is what I'm trying to say. Next slide. Earlier I said that you can find studies to explore at your nearby medical center. I'm showing you a couple of their websites, like Emory University in Atlanta, UC San Diego, and the University of Rochester, and they'll list studies that they're conducting at their sites. They're also in the network for Research Match, and they're using us, so you can see that they're promoting Research Match on their websites. Next slide. There are a wide variety of studies on Research Match. It's not just about hearing loss. It's about all diseases, and all different trials and researchers are using Research Match to find volunteers. So you can be in a study about depression and anxiety, or memory loss, diabetes, high blood pressure, vision loss, hearing loss, mobility problems, arthritis, kidney problems, and prevention issues. Next slide. Research Match has over 141,000 volunteers right now. We're used at 166 different research sites across the United States of America, including the University of Puerto Rico. We help to complete trials, and then publications are written. Next slide. This is a visual of the sign-up process. If you want to join the Research Match community, you'll read information about what happens in Research Match in the agreement, and then you'll be asked to create an account with a username and password so that you can log back into your dashboard and nobody else can log into your dashboard. When you're creating an account, you'll give us your name, your address, your phone number, and a little bit of information about you, like your height and weight and your gender and your race. We don't ask your social security number. We don't ask you for any financial information whatsoever, and there's no fee to join. Next slide. And this is part of the process of the sign up is right there. If you are willing, you'll tell us about your health conditions and your medications, your over-the-counter drugs, but you don't have to. You could register and not tell us anything, but if you want a better match with a researcher, you'll tell us about you'll enter some health conditions that you may be experiencing. You'll also tell us about your preference for traveling. If you only want to be in a study that's 25 miles away, you'll tell us that, and those are the studies that we'll send you. Just go back one slide. The researchers come on from the institutions, but the researchers, remember, they have oversight by the IRB and also the Office of Human Research Protections and federal regulations, so they have to have approved studies, and they can only come on through their institutions, and there's lots of oversight there. It's important for you to know that a researcher can send out a message, and that message has got a stamp of approval by the IRB, and that's the message that you'll see. But the researcher can't see your email or your phone number or your home address or your name until you release that. Next slide. So you might see an email like this one here that'll have a description of the study, and then you get to say, yes, I'm interested. And when you say yes, then you're sending your email and phone number and home address and name to the researcher. Or you have the right to say, no thanks. You also have the right to just ignore the email altogether. And you can withdraw from Research Match at any time. Next slide. But if you are interested, then the researcher has your email and your phone number and will contact you directly. And then the match is made. Next slide. You can also look for studies yourself on trialstoday.org, and it's Trials Today is another tool that we've created at Vanderbilt, and we provide. It's funded also by the NIH, and this is a website. It's a search engine like Google so that you can use to find studies. Next slide. It's easier to use than clinicaltrials.gov. Clinicaltrials.gov, again, is a list which you can use, but it's a little bit difficult to navigate. Trials Today is showing studies that are actively looking for volunteers, and you can find out how to directly contact the researchers through Trials Today. Next slide. When you come on to Trials Today, it's going to ask you a little bit about the types of studies that you're interested in taking part in and how far you're willing to travel and your gender and your age. Next slide. So in this screenshot, I logged into Trials Today, and then I put in that I was interested in hearing loss trials, and all of these trials came up. A total of 54 trials are currently enrolling around the topic of hearing loss across the country. I didn't put any travel restrictions. Okay, next slide. And then on top of that first search for hearing loss trials, in this refined research results box right there, I typed in gene therapy. So then it's showing me one trial that's going on. It's called the safety, tolerability, and efficacy of this device in patients with unilateral and bilateral severe to profound hearing loss. And then if you clicked on that, it would show you the locations for that trial and how to find out more information. Next slide. Okay, so we talked about a lot of stuff. Because of volunteers, a greater understanding of the underlying mechanisms of hearing loss and other diseases has been made possible, and it's really only because of the volunteers. Our volunteers are the most important part of research. Even newer treatments have been developed because of volunteers, and new treatments are being tested right now in clinical trials across this country. In summary, you are the most important part in research. There are many types of research studies. Not all studies are these clinical trials that are much higher risk than other studies. The studies that I've taken part in around hearing loss, I sat in front of a computer with headphones on, and I gave my opinion. I was in a study where I took aspirin for 5 days and was involved in some interventions. So there's many types of studies. I've done many surveys for people that help them design new things. The FDA and the Office of Human Research Protections govern researchers and research. So it's good to know that there are some regulatory bodies that oversee what happens in these studies. The more people who take part in clinical trials, the faster we'll find better and we'll find new treatments, and those new treatments should be better. Understand what will happen if you do take part in a study. Remember, you can always stop at any time, and always remember that you should ask questions and ask for help. Next slide. So with that, we'll open it up for questions. I'd again like to thank Barbara Kelly and the Hearing Loss Association of America. I'd also like to thank my team at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, who's on Research Match, the developers that develop it, the people who answer the emails and the phone calls, and everybody who's involved in Research Match across the country. There's hundreds of liaisons at every institution that are helping our researchers and our participants. So if there are any questions, I will take them now.
Loretta, that was really great. I don't see any questions coming up on any of the question bars, but of course this is my first time doing a webinar, so I don't think we've missed them, have we?
Again, it's great to have the executive director running this webinar.
Oh, just a pinch hitter. Don't get used to this. But we are so happy to have you here tonight. Our research symposium this year at our annual convention in Rochester last year was on genetics and hearing loss. And those scientists have put together a list of research centers and research information that we are going to make available on our website. So I just want everybody to know that it, in addition to your information, it will be there as well. Now I'm just told to click on Q&A. I think I see a question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Nikki, Colorado Springs says, "Wonderful to know. Thanks so much." Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, this was really great information. We also videotaped those research symposium presentations. We'll have those available as well. And Loretta's presentation will also be archived in our webinar library for playback. So you can watch it again and they will be captioned, or you can tell your friends and family about it. Loretta, is there anything else you would like to add?
It's been a pleasure, and my email is loretta@researchmatch.org, and you can, if you think of a question, you can always email me, and I'm happy to answer it for you. Yeah.
There it is, right there. It is.
Loretta@researchmatch.org.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to all the attendees, and thank you to Deanna Baker, who is remote captioning this from Arizona, and Loretta's in Tennessee. And please come to hearingloss.org and find out more about our organization, how you can join a chapter in your local area for peer-to-peer support. We have a veterans virtual chapter now that is really taking off and has a lot of momentum. And we also have our fall walk for hearing. And there's many ways to connect with us that suits you, and these webinars are one of them. And thank you again, Loretta. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you to all the participants for coming. I'm going to say goodnight now, and I hope to see you all at a future webinar. Just check our schedule. I have to follow my directions now.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.